This is a Q Media production.
Leading and navigating change across a business can be overwhelming. So many leaders are handed a project by their board or CEO, and suddenly they're expected to create the vision, inspire their team, navigate roadblocks, and make some really hard decisions. It can feel like you're swimming in the ocean at night, not knowing which way to go. So how is a leader supposed to know how to drive change? The challenge is, there's no course or dummy's guide to leading change. Until now. This is your crash course in leading change, and I'm your guide, Lauren Ryder. In this podcast, you'll learn from top C-suite and executive leaders who've driven impactful change across their organizations. No matter what project you're leading, maybe it's a sales transformation or a restructure or a digital transformation, either way, the approach to leading change is the same. It all starts with an inspirational leader, and that's you. Today on the podcast, we have Anthony Scott, the CEO of Simply AI, a company that solves business problems using data and automation. But automation can be a really scary word. The first thing that comes to most people's minds is, am I going to lose my job? But actually, quite the opposite happens. Automation saves time and money, and staff get the time back where they're able to upskill and do the job that they really want to do. It's actually the technology that every business needs. But the best benefit is that employees are much happier and companies get much higher customer satisfaction scores. In layman's terms, it's like having a reliable team member that always gets shit done. But they'll come to you when they need a bit of help. I hope you enjoy this conversation about how Anthony Scott is leading change with Simply AI. Hey, Anthony.
There you go.
You have a company called Simply AI. Now, I think that artificial intelligence is neither artificial nor intelligence. It's written by humans and can only operate within the realm that it's been written. Do you agree?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. So what we do in Simply AI, what we do, we automate what people do as a job. And so when we design an automation, we're actually needing to use the people who actually do the job to design it. So what we do, we're actually automating what they do every day from a keystroke level right through to decisioning to make their jobs easier. And so it's very much human-centric designed to get the right outcomes for a customer.
You say you work for a company, Simply AI. I'm sure everyone says to you, what is AI? How would you describe it?
Yeah, so what AI is, and there's a lot of different terms around it. So you've got automation, which is called RPA, and that's automation. Then you've got data modernization and all those sorts of stuff. AI is bringing automation and data together, right, to make intelligent decisions, intelligent outcomes for a customer. So it might be important decisioning around a process, or it may be getting good customer insights for a customer. And so for example, one of our other customers, and this is the best way to describe AI, for one of our leasing customers, we've built a process, an AI process that looks at the value of your car and when's the best time to sell your car. Or from a maintenance point of view, predictive maintenance, when you should be, getting your car, your maintenance repairs. So it's looking at those algorithms on when's the best time to do things as well. So that's actually AI. The term gets bastardized quite a lot in the industry, but it's when you bring the data and automation together to look at those outcomes.
So how did you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I was contracted in by an organisation who had a recommendation to offshore a number of departments overseas as a cost measure. And also their service levels, to improve their service levels and offering for the customers. When I had a look at it, I looked at that we could actually automate the practice a lot better. We could actually keep the jobs onshore, and we can automate it to get a better customer outcome. So we did a business case to offshore and did a business case to automate. So when we had a look at the benefits of automation, about keeping jobs onshore, keeping the knowledge onshore, still supporting our customers and getting a better customer experience, it was a no-brainer for the organisation. So that's how we got into doing this type of automation.
So tell us a little bit more about the actual project itself. So how did the business realise that this is something that they needed to do, and also what was their vision?
Yeah, so the vision was to improve their offerings to their customers and their service.
And what industry was this in?
This was in the financial services industry, and it was to improve also their service levels and their hours of operations. So what we did, we sat down with the people doing the job and had a look at what they did as a job, and we helped design, what they did and what parts we could automate. And what we did was we got rid of the low value, high volume type of work, so they can actually have those really good moments with the customer. So rather than doing the mundane tasks, it freed them up to actually have those really important moments with that customer experience, rather than doing the processing type work.
So do you think it was a success?
Oh, it was great success.
Yeah. So how did you know that?
Because when you get the NPS surveys back from the customers, the customer satisfaction went up.
Right.
Okay, the staff satisfaction went up because we got rid of the mundane, boring tasks, and they're actually problem solving with the customer and delighting the customer.
So let's delve a little bit deeper into how you actually chose these use cases, because it sounds like it was across the entire business that you were automating processes.
So what we do when we go into an organisation, we speak to the exec and say, this is what automation is, and this is how we approach it. So what we want to look at when we go into a business unit, let's have a look at all your processes, and let's have a look at where your volumes are and where how's your service levels going with the customers in that area, and then look at where your staff pressures are, and then we do a review of a process, and we have a look at what parts we could actually automate through. What are the predictable automated parts that we can actually automate through, and what parts we need to protect to have that customer experience, still that human touch customer experience. So we do that. We set the scene with the execs first, and then we work with the people who actually do the job, and that's really important from a change point of view, because when you put in this type of automation, it's owned by the business unit. It becomes part of their family. It's part of their colleagues. They're handing work off to an automated process, and the automated process is sometimes handing it back to them. So they've got to work with it, and it's theirs, and they own it. And it's no different from any other organisation who hasn't adopted. If you have a change, you need to explain the change to your staff of what's changed. It's the same with when you introduce an automation. It's owned by the business unit, so they have to tell the automation team that this has changed, so the automation can keep up with what the changing needs of the customer and the business is.
But it sounds a bit risky. I mean, the minute you mention automation in any business, the first thing that all of your staff will say is, but what about my job? Am I still going to have a job at the end of this? I mean, I can imagine the resistance would be massive.
Yeah. So I've been doing this since 2016. We've automated over 600 processes. I haven't seen anyone lose their job yet.
And why is that?
Because, companies are growing, and there's always a need to bring staff on, and there's staff shortages. But also, it's also improving the customer experience with the customers. So it's reinvesting back into the organisation. When you look at the benefits of automation, it's around how you're delighting your customers, how are you improving that customer experience, how are you improving that staff experience. Because a lot of the companies we deal with, they have 20-25% staff turnover. So that actually helps with being able to maintain that experience for the customer in a time where we're turning over staff and then retraining staff. But also from a risk point of view. So risk is really important. So everything in automation done is totally auditable, 100%. It'll only do what it's been exactly supposed to do. If it gets something it doesn't like, it actually spits it out to a human being, and it's designed that way. So when we implement and go through the development stage, we work with the SMEs who do the job, and they sign it off to say it's actually behaving the way it should. And that's really, really important.
So that sounds to me like a really key part of the change management process. So, in change in any project, the key is to bring all of your stakeholders on board and all of the team members who are impacted. So it sounds like you do the same thing in an automation process where you actually bring all of the people who do the process on the journey.
When I talk to the execs around when they introduce this type of technology, the technology is actually the easy bit. It's the change management aspect. It always comes back to change. Because what we're doing with this technology, if it's done properly, we're creating a safe experience for the staff, a safe experience for the customers. And we're involving the staff to delight the customers, and it's really, really important. But it's to bring them on the journey as well, because it's only successful as the people around, using the technology.
So, even though this is making it easier, at the end of the day, we're actually still putting new technology, new software into an organization that they don't already have. So that generally comes with a whole layer of change pieces and how do we manage it within our organization. And, sometimes we give it to the IT department or a business owner. With automation, what do you recommend is the right way to actually put it within an organization?
Yeah, really great question. So when we go in there and we do the initial scoping of what's possible, what's possible to automate, we also have a look at the organisation, look at their capability, because change management is so important from an IT point of view and also a business point of view. So when we talk about what's required to develop, implement, and ongoing support, we'll do a review with the organisation to see how we can embed it into their current practices. That means upskilling them into their current practices, or if they don't have that skill set, what support they need to get brought in to actually support that going forward. And this is where that needs to be done up front and run in parallel to the implementation, because what we need to do, we need to make sure that when we're putting this in, we're doing it safely for the organisation. And that's really, really important. So those change management practices are actually key. As I said, I've said this and, I'll keep going back to it. This is a change management exercise. The technology is the easy bit. It's the people and the change to it.
So we all want to nail our strategy, right? But here's the thing I've picked up from working with growing companies. Their leaders aren't always singing the same tune. Processes are not built to win. And there's a few key people who could use some skill boosting. The reality is, to make this happen, you've got to get three things in sync: people, processes, and systems. Now here's a smart move to keep that growth growing strong. Dive into our transformation and change programs, or a professional development program for your people. Our team have worked with some of the world's biggest businesses, giving them clear ways of working, upskilling their leaders, and taking all their headaches away from wondering if they're doing it right. We only have limited spots each year, so inquire at our site, www.leading-edge.global, and mention you heard it from this podcast. So let's say we've started a project, we're about to kick it off. All of the people who are working within the organization still have their BAU job. And I come across this all the time. We're putting in a new project, a new transformation, like really ripping out the guts of what a company does. And yet people are saying, hang on, I'm busy. I've still got stuff to do. How do you manage that? Have you come across that within your organization, getting kind of people's attention to roll this out?
See, the good thing about it is because this type of technology can implement in small chunk-sized pieces, so you can get the benefits up front early. So it frees people up to actually help do those next lot of development processes.
So you're almost doing like your pilot/proof of concept so early that you're going to get your buy-in, so that people are going, yes, I want more.
Yeah. So we go away from a proof of concept in a pilot, because a pilot and a proof of concept is only to prove to the organisation how that's going to impact their change management. Right, so I wrote an article years ago saying you should never pilot without a pipeline. So understand what's important in your organisation and start developing and adding that value back to the staff, so that you're wowing the staff and you're wowing the customers. So I'll give you an example of one we did with a bank. So we automated the mortgage origination process. And this was a really good one for a change for the organisation and the customers. So we took a mortgage processing that usually takes 23 days down to under 7 minutes.
Whoa.
And that's from application right through to pre-approval. So when you think about when you go and apply for a home loan, you fill out an application, and after the application you're asked to put your pay slips and your supporting material. And then that goes to a department who does a review of that. And then usually they have a 3-day SLA, and after 3 days they'll come back and say, hey Lauren, you forgot this off your application. And that's a 3-day lapse. So you get it back, you fix it up, you resubmit it, then it goes back through that program again. And once that's passed, then it's passed to the decisioning team and so forth. So what we did from an end-to-end experience, we had a look at that end-to-end customer experience and said, okay, if you've put in an application online or through a lender, and so what the automation would do is actually review your application straight away. And if you had all the information there and you had your most recent pay slips, it was approved within seconds. It then moved on. If it missed anything, it was coming back to you within 15, 20 seconds to say, hey Lauren, you've missed this bit of information, can you resubmit it? So you're not waiting 3 days. And then all of a sudden, rather than going to another department, the bot's then continuing the process through. So then it's saying, okay, taking your information, putting it in the decisioning tool, do you meet the criteria? and it says, yes, you met the criteria. If it doesn't meet the criteria, it kicks it out to a human being to ring you up and say, hey, you haven't met the criteria. Let's reevaluate your application. But if you go through and it meets that criteria, then it goes through credit checking and so on and so forth. So what we've done, we've automated the applications that would have gone straight through 3 different departments to get you a decision within 7 minutes. That would have gone through normally anyway with human, with multiple human touches, but it was going to be processed through. But what it did in those departments, it enabled them to spend time with those ones that needed exceptioned out or failed for whatever reason to ring the customer and work through that application with the customer. So it didn't take any jobs away. What it meant was they were able to turn around, have a better customer experience for the customer. So the customer wasn't waiting 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, 15 days to find out there was an issue. They were getting next day phone calls.
That's amazing.
And that's where it adds that value. And so from a staffing point of view, they're feeling empowered because they're problem solving. They're not processing.
And do you see that in employee engagement scores?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. So there's multiple examples across the insurance industry around claims processing. And claims is a really important part of, especially in the insurance industry. And it's one of those, just like a mortgage, it's an emotional moment for a customer. So if you can be a champion at those emotional times and those emotional decisions, it's great for the organisation's brand, it's great for the customer, and it's really good for the staff. And then you start seeing, your complaints going down, and you start seeing improvements in your NPS scores.
And then that's what it's all about,
That
isn't
absolutely
it?
is.
So we talked about, you just mentioned and touched on some of the processes that have been automated. And I guess, financial services, there's a lot of data processing. There's a lot of that you can kind of say, yeah, that can be automated. Do you have any processes that you've automated that maybe initially you thought, I don't know if we can do this? Like, what are some really key ones that, maybe other people might look into?
Yeah, so when you look around all the finance departments and all that sort of stuff, so we quite often go in there to a finance department and they'll have a whole heap of invoices. And we went to one particular organisation that had, they processed 10,000 invoices a month. But there was, over 100 different types of invoices. And so having to look at the complexity of those invoices, and sometimes is it worth spending the development dollars, depends on, to get that outcome. But this is where we look at process improvement as well. So the question to the organisation, can you move some of those invoices into a single template over a period of time? So you can go in and automate, say, the 50% of it, and then over time move those customers onto that template, and then you're actually improving your automation from 50% up to 90%. But with technology's moved on so much, even in the last 5 years, our technology is able to read multiple forms of different invoices as well. So the technology is improving as well.
So you mentioned about processes, and you mentioned earlier that if a process changes, it gets kicked out. But what happens if something actually happens internally in the organization? I don't know, maybe there's some sort of a change that they need to make globally. What happens when we actually need to change the process? What does the bot do?
Yeah, so just correct you on what you said there. So the bot will, by design, in a process, you'll have exceptions that say, in this criteria, in this part of the process, I actually want it to go to a human being. So we'll design it to actually go out to a human being. If it gets some poor data through or something's missing, it'll kick it out to a human being, right? But coming back to your change point of view, so if an organisation makes a change to a system, just say you change your landing page, just like you'd have to communicate to the staff saying, don't use this URL, use that URL. You go back to the team that looks after the automation and say, can you please change the URL? So it's still a part of that change program. And this is where it brings IT and business close together because it's team sport. And that's where, the business, like they get communicated around IT changes, having that awareness of the impacting to the automation too, is because basically the automation is just standing in for a human being.
Yeah, it sounds like a real lesson in stakeholder management, actually the business and IT working together. I mean, I can imagine if suddenly something breaks and the whole team is kind of has their hands up. I mean, having IT on hand to quickly fix that and reprogram it is really important. How do organizations handle that? Yeah,
it's actually interesting because what it's, traditionally IT run these type of things, but this is, business-led, supported by IT. And this is where bringing the organisation together closely is really, really important to have that communication and conversation.
Has it gone wrong? Have you had any ones that haven't worked?
Haven't gone wrong. They haven't gone as well as we wanted to. And that was, and this comes back from learning. So when we go into an organisation, when we sit down with an SME, they'll tell us about a process. So if any of the part of that process or an exception that happens at the end of the month or a quarter is missed, the automation won't like that or kick it out to a human being. And it's a matter of picking that up and then do we want to automate that bit or do we want to leave it go back to a human being? So they're the sort of things you get missed,
Right.
is around those things that don't happen regularly. So if any process, you have those exceptions that come through periodically, annually, and all those type of things.
And how long, I mean, if you think about, we're going through, you talk about a quarterly thing, right? An activity that happens once a quarter that you might have missed. How long typically would your project last? So would it be under 3 months so you might not see that particular process? Or how long do these things last to implement an automation?
Well, it depends on the automation. So we've implemented automations within a day, right up to a month. So it depends on the complexity of the automation. It depends. So when we have a look at do an assessment around a process, we have a look at we're a complexity matrix. So it's how many different systems is it using, how many different steps there is, because quite often we'll break it down and implement bite-sized pieces first and let it grow. So, but typically when we go into an organisation, we look for a pipeline of work, and then we roll them through it. Coming back to your question around the improvements over time, once we've built a automation, we've got an internal code library. So we've got those learnings that we can actually share with other customers and around code and make things a lot more efficient and effective. And so there's things that our customers are getting the advantage of things that we did 2 to 3 years ago. So for example, if we built a bit of code, for example, to log into Salesforce, we've actually got that code already built. And the beautiful thing is, if you've in an organisation will come in and build 20 different processes, and just say they're all with Salesforce or SAP or Oracle, rather than having to change each of those processes, the way we build it is once if we need to change that process, we change it once and then it replicates across all the others. So it makes it more efficient and effective, cost efficient and effective as well.
So have there been customers that say, come in there and they go, you know what, actually, this isn't for me. I really don't think there's anything that I could or should automate?
Typically no, because people are looking to improve that customer experience. They're looking, to improve that staff experience. As I said, with staff turnover, and also it's well documented there's staff shortages in the marketplace. So being able to attract staff. And so, it's really important. It's a really important strategy for an organisation to actually implement.
So we talked about, you talked about going from 23 days, I think you said, to 7 minutes, something like that. We can have some huge improvements in ROI, and that's a really great way to measure. Are there other ways to measure the benefits of automation or the ROI?
Yeah, so you've got, not just, costs out of the business, you've got cost avoidance, you've got reduced training time. You've got staff satisfaction, you've got obviously customer satisfaction. You've got, how compliant you are for industry compliance. We do a lot of work, especially, so what we do in Simply AI, we bring data improvements together with automation. Looking at regulatory reporting is really important too. So, it's how compliant we are to regulators as well, and how compliant we are to our internal audit, and also quality. So we went into one organisation that part of their internal quality process was just to review 5% of the volume of work being done by the staff. We automated that process so they could actually automate the whole lot. So they're looking at training trends and so the effectiveness of training. So it's also, making training more efficient and effective as well.
Let's go back into the practical aspects of user, right? So user gets to their computer and suddenly there's a bot. What does it look like? How does it get experienced by somebody who is sitting at their computer doing their job?
Oh, you've been watching Perfect Match. Dexter doesn't come across the floor. So it's a piece of software that sits on a virtual server, and so it sits in the background.
Right. So really, they might just get an email.
Yeah. So we have bots that, for example, that's another really good use case. So when you look at customer service and they come in the morning and they have thousands of emails there, we'll put an automation there that will index the emails. So we'll say if an email comes in and it's for a complaint, it will actually automatically get routed to the complaints department. If an email comes in and there's an invoice, it should go to the finance department, or automatically go to the finance department. So when customer service comes in, they get the emails that they need to be responding to the customers first and priority.
Do you think I can get that on my email? I'd like that to be clean. Just send it to someone else. So I suppose, so if somebody wants to look at this, we say, what sort of questions should they be asking, right? Where do they start?
So I'd be having a look at within their own business area. Is what they do repeatable? Is it rules-based? Is there a rule to it? And how good's your data, right? Because automation loves rules. If it's rules and it's repeatable, it's perfect. And then you have a look at your data. Is there any data issues? And because that's a very, very important consideration as well. And this is where simply how I do it differently from the others. We will look at your data quality as well. Because an automation, if the data's not good, it will kick out to human beings. So we'll do a review and we'll clean up the data as well to get that greater customer experience and throughput.
Cool.
So have a look at how repeatable is your work. Have a look at where your volumes are and where your service levels are not up to where you want it to be. And the thing is with automation, the whole process doesn't have to be automated. We can automate part of it. So we've got automations where, for example, the automation may start it, kick it out to a human being. The human being will do something, hand it back to the automation will continue, maybe kick it back to a human being again. So you can actually automate parts of it. You don't need to find something that be 100% automatable.
So let's just take an example of like a customer service representative. Call comes in. Can you walk us through an example that you've done that has just absolutely sort of blown their minds?
So from a call center point of view, this is a great example. So you've rung me up and you've hit on the IVR that you want a copy of your statement, but you want to speak to me. So as I'm DMVing you, I already know you're looking for a copy of your statement. So while I'm identifying who you are, the bot's in the background gone and got your statement and actually presented it to me. And it also then sends it out how you've actually asked it to be sent out already as a part of your account makeup, whether it's email or post. So it's actually saving you time trying to find it. It's also like in insurance. You may have your insurer may have multiple systems at the back, and you may have part of your files in multiple systems. So rather than me putting you on hold to go find you, the bot in the background gets it and actually displays it to the call center agent. So I'm actually having that conversation with you. So there's no gap. And that's where it's really, really cool. So it actually improves that. So I'm not looking to find stuff. And so, for example, if you rang up and were asking about a term deposit, right? As soon as you said term deposit, as I'm identifying you again, it's actually pulling up your account, your term deposit, right? And what your term deposit is, and also what current interest rates you can go on if you wanted to roll it over, or if you wanted to exit, what's the process of exiting? So rather than having to search for that knowledge article, it's actually bringing the knowledge articles forward as well.
Amazing.
So from a customer experience point of view, it's really cool because you're not being put on hold. From a call center agent point of view, I'm not trying to go and find the information. It's actually being presented
and you
to me.
actually have a real conversation with the customer.
Absolutely.
Real time.
Yeah, you can actually have that, meet the customer and engage rather than say in process mode.
So I'm thinking when we're talking about the implementation and the teams that you have to set up, and we've talked about kind of the IT teams that are needed to actually do the implementation and all of that. What kind of skills are actually needed within an organization to support this type of technology ongoing?
Yeah. Okay, so what's really key is, from an IT point of view, so obviously, a lot of companies already have their good ITIL processes around incident change and problem. So it's around embedding this as just another part of a product, what they already do anyway. So it's actually skilling them up and saying, this is a new product, and it should fall into their current processes. And so it's not having to add anything new to an organisation that's got those processes. So it's adding into what they've already got. And this is where you want to embed as much as you can into the current operations into an organisation.
So the technology itself, does the IT team have to learn anything new?
Not necessarily. So, it depends on the model they want to go to. What we like there's a number of different models we do with an organisation. If they will come in and do the initial setup for them. If they want us to upskill and create development teams, we'll upskill them and create development teams and support teams for them. So we'll actually, as their current support teams, we'll upskill them in this technology.
Have you ever taken people who are not technology focused and like business people and put them into technology roles?
Look, this is where it's so cool. So we did some automation for a law firm. And we actually came across, as we were part of going through this, having a look at what's automatable or not, we had this paralegal who was, she was fantastic. She was so inquisitive. And so, there's online courses that we can, provide them for free. So she got herself qualified. And now she's doing it now for a full-time job.
Well, that is a career swap, isn't it?
And it's actually really cool. So there's a lot of stories that people have gone into business units and people have, upskilled themselves and then started becoming developers. And it's a really, really cool thing.
Hey guys, I've had a lot of people asking me questions about leadership, high-performing teams, and business trends. So I've created the Leading Edge Brief, which is like having a cup of coffee with me in your email. Sign up today on our website, leading-edge.global. It's the best way to stay connected and keep up with any upcoming events, updates, and all the good stuff. Now back to the podcast. So we are hearing in the media about ChatGPT and all of the other tools that come along with it. Are you getting a lot of questions about that at the moment, how that's going to impact what you do?
Yeah, no, so ChatGPT has actually been a good awakening for the art of the possible in technology. Like everything else, you've got to make sure you understand how it's used and the pitfalls of it all as well. So it's fantastic to go and have a look for content saying, look, I want to write a letter, give me an idea of a letter. You use it for good, but there's some pitfalls at the moment. And so until something's regulated, you've just got to be careful, especially if you're around customer data. And this is where, when we design things, we do it safely. And so everything needs to be done safely.
And how do you do that? How do you know that it's safe?
Well, once again, when you have a look at, is it adopted by your organisation as an enterprise tool? Is it been approved by your organisation through your security standards and your IT protocols? That's really, really important, first and foremost. So
no guerrilla RPA projects allowed.
Yeah. So I certainly, unless you've got those internal reviews and making sure that you're protecting your organisation, you're protecting your customers, and you're protecting yourself. That's where the technology is going. So I'm hoping over time there's a lot more governance around these type of things. So there are enterprise standards that we can use. But as I said, they're actually great if you want to look, and say, I want to write a letter to mum. Give you an example. I'm a sorry letter to mum. It's fantastic. Not that I've had to do that many times.
I don't believe you.
But, just be really careful on how you use it and what you disclose in there.
If there's listeners here who want to, they're listening and they're going, hey, actually, this sounds really good. What is the advice to kind of get started? How would you sort of say, let's do this? What would make someone say that?
Yeah, come and speak to us and have a look at what we've done for people within those industries, and share experiences. One of the things that we do really well at Simply AI, we have forums where we get customers and also people who are interested in it. We have forums. They're called yarning circles. And it's basically, yarning circles is an Aboriginal term of people getting around the circle and just chatting about things. And so hearing from the peers in their industries and what they've learned and what they've done and what the do's and don'ts actually is a really good way of understanding whether it's good for you or not. So rather than listening to someone from from Simply AI or with someone else.
I don't think anyone wants to sit and listen to the salesperson tell you about
absolutely. Talk to the customers who've done it.
In closing, what is the number one thing that you would like to share with the world about AI?
Yeah, look, have the conversation. But it comes back to, any sort of technology comes back to, why is it important for your customer? Why is it important for your staff? There's a human element. It will always be there and always needs to be there. It's there to drive good business outcomes, good people outcomes all the time. And if you're unsure, go and speak to someone, and more importantly, speak to people who are already doing it as well, because they'll be open with their learnings from it and what worked and what didn't work. And so have the conversation first, be open to it. Remember, we're here to delight our customers and delight our staff. It's really, really important.
Excellent. Well,
and there's just one other message. Is one of my favourite ads on TV was years ago, and they talk about change management. And it was a Simpson washing machine ad, and it was in the ad there was a brand new washing machine on the side of a river in India, and the ladies were coming out of the river and hitting the washing machine with their clothes. And so that was a perfect example. You can bring the best technology in the world, unless you bring the people to it, they'll use it the way they always have. So bring the people to it. Don't hide. Embrace it. show them why it will work for them and what's the benefit for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure.